This is our second in a series of webinars for small business, navigating the impacts of COVID-19. I'm Barbara Coffey, Director of Economic Initiatives for the City of Tucson. And now we are able to host up to 500 participants. So 100 will be able to use video, others will be able to view and listen. Feel free to enter your questions in the chat box and we will get to as many of those as possible in our time together this afternoon. What I would like to do for the first half of the hour is have our speakers share for about 10 minutes each, and then I will moderate some Q&A to round out our hour. And again, this dialogue is for you, so feel free to ask questions, put those in the chat box, I think you are able to unmute yourselves at that point. We'll see how that goes. I know I have control and you have control. We'll figure it out. But we'll ask all our participants to stay muted while the speakers are speaking so that we can hear as best possible. And since we have a large number of attendees. So I'm going to load a slide deck for Ellen Curtin, and I will ask her to start for us this afternoon. Ellen is Director of the Small Business Development Center at Pima Community College. And so I'm going to get your slides ready to go here. A click of the screen. And let's do...
Do you have to click down? I guess
it looks like I will for you. Yes. So I'll follow along. Ellen, why don't you share with us a little bit about the updates from SBA and definitely program details on the economic injury disaster loans.
Okay, so this slide deck, it just covers the disaster relief loans. So I'm actually going to spend the least time on that because the CARES Act came out and that includes so much more. Here's a couple things I will tell you if you're applying for this. First of all, the SBA never expected the volume, was not prepared, did not have the bandwidth, and so they were pretty aggressive thinking, well, we'll get a decision in 3 days and fund in 3 weeks. Well, it's taking at least 3 weeks just to get decisions. And the bandwidth is really tight. What I tell everyone is, just like at the SBDC work with our clients, you have to have a complete package. Everything they asked without exception. The only thing they did was that tax returns are not required now. The form that you sign will allow them to go to the IRS and get those. But please be complete. They're going to look into your credit score. So if there's anything there you feel you need to explain, you want to do that. Make it easy for them to make a decision for you. As far as I know, decisions have been made, but no funds have been released yet, just because of the overload. They're increasing bandwidth and they're also hiring employees. So the no tax returns, there will be some deferment on payments that'll come down later. Be sure that you note when you're saying the reason that you want the loan, it has to be only to reimburse expenses. They can't use it for anything else. In this particular loan, that's the one that's up on the screen. So if it's okay, if you want to just come back, I have information that's brand new on the CARES Act that won't be covered on this. There is, in terms of the disaster relief, there is a one-page document. I don't know if I sent that over to you, Barbara. If not, I will. It's the 3-step process. It's very straightforward to use, and people haven't had trouble uploading. If there's too much volume, people have mailed them. So you can mail your application or do it online. What's just come out, and just so you know, it's 800 pages. So I haven't read all 800 pages, but I've read a lot. And so the first one that's probably the most prominent one right now is it's PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. And these loans, which are really very generous, are coming from the federal government, the funds for those, but they're going through the banks to make them. So, and I'll tell you what the criteria are. But my biggest advice is for you to go to your bank. If you go to a new bank, they don't know you, they're going to be underwriting just as they would any regular loan. And so it's better to go to your bank. Also, you have deposits there. The way that these loans are going to be funded, they have to go into a business bank account. So again, if you have a bank, I would use that, and that'll speed up that process. Just so you know, the bankers have not gotten all their instructions yet. They're gearing up for it. I think what a lot of banks are trying to do is reach out to their clients first and see if they can help them, because they already have a lot of information, and that definitely can save time. So the intent of this is so that companies will retain their employees. That's why it's called Paycheck Protection Program. Unlike the other one, which is just for the business specific. So these are 100% federally guaranteed. So only banks that have the SBA guarantee will be doing these. It's a good majority, but not all banks. So if you're a bank, that's the first question you want to ask. And then when we talk about what they can use these funds for, it's very specific for employee benefits, but it does include some mortgage payments, some rent, utilities, and if there's interest on current debt that you have. Those are the things that they will include. The size of the loan is 250% of your average monthly payroll. And people don't have to use today's. Let's say their highest time was last December. They're able to use that figure, but they need to calculate that, so they'll see how much that they can get. They're 10-year loans, 4% interest rate. There's no loan fees and there's no prepayment penalties, which is very unusual for SBA loans, but also a very good thing. So it's very important that, again, that you go through your banks. The banks are gearing up to get the information for these, but if you're already a client, they can at least start that part of the credit process until they get their federal information. Am I at my 10 minutes?
Oh, you're doing
Can't hear
great.
you.
And I just wanted to bring these slides back up because I probably wasn't following where you were headed exactly. But I think one thing to note is we will have these slides available for everyone to refer back to. Is there anything you want to point to in particular on the loan program?
So this, again, this particular program is the one that's the disaster loan program. It was the first one that came out. SBA is totally processing it. They were going to fund it. It was only after the $2 trillion special program was approved last week that these other loans became available. And I would say that they're probably more favorable. So that's probably a route more people are going to go. And again, they can get ahead of the curve if they start working with their bank and start putting their information together. So a general SBA loan for underwriting, anyone that needs some help on that, you know, the SBDC, you'll see that in all the materials, except I went on the SBA site and they had our old address. So I don't know, Barbara, if you'll be providing contact information as well when you send this out, but the SBDC provides no cost one-on-one counseling for business. So as they go through the process and have questions or want us to review, we can do that.
That's great. And Ellen, I love your idea that it's great to use a bank that you have a relationship with. I think that's good advice. Can you say more about that?
So again, first thing you want to find out is if they are an SBA approved lender, because if they're not, they cannot do these loans. So that's the first thing you want to find out. And then if not, there's a listing. I can send you the link, Barbara, as to what banks are SBA approved. We just got that today. So I can send that out to you, and that will list all the banks. So if you deal with one of the larger banks, a number of mid-sized banks are SBA approved. So it's a pretty good sized list, but may not be all. So like WaFed, WaFed, who's the new bank, they aren't approved yet. They're applying for it. They are doing some small loans to help folks. So that's why coming back to your bank, and if it is, just first thing you want to check out, are they SBA approved?
So there's a question from the chat room. Are these loans forgivable?
The PPPs are, the disaster relief are not. So we conceive that more people are going to probably be reaching towards these loans. But again, the one thing I'm not sure I said that's important, this is all about keeping employees employed. And there's some very strict requirements in it. Unlike the disaster relief, it's what's going on with the business and what they're suffering and how they can get relief from that. So that's that one loan. This other one, why there's some forgiveness in here, is it's really wrapped around the employees. They don't want companies laying off people, getting these funds, and then it's not going back for the employee benefit. So that's a very important feature.
So Ellen, I'm on the slide that has ineligible entities in terms of the economic injury disaster loan, lists some of the businesses that are not eligible. And I know there was a question about whether 501c3s were eligible, but it looks to be, according to this, that they're not for the disaster injury, but maybe the other product?
Yes, I was looking into that, and the 501c3s are eligible with this new program. Like I say, I'm trying in a little bit of time to go through this all. So nonprofits, 501c3s and 501c19s are eligible.
Okay, so hopefully that answered the question there, that there is eligibility on the part of the 501c3s. Again, I'm clicking through some of these. This will be all good information that we will send out to you. There's just a follow-up clarification, both types of loans, Ellen, for the 501c3 nonprofits?
No, the slide that you had up here with the nonprofits are eligible, but not, let's see, how did they put it? So religious organizations and charitable organizations are not. When they're talking about nonprofits that work with, as you know, a business entity are eligible, but the ones that are purely charitable or religious are not.
So I think one of the things to do maybe is to definitely, you know, we'll make sure that everyone has your contact information at the SBDC, that you could answer questions like that. You and your team could maybe further clarify if someone had a question as to the type of organization status in order to determine what loan product might be a best fit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's always details, I'm telling you, always details. There's a question about whether one should submit the application to the bank or online at SBA only.
On the new loan, from the CARE Act, it specifically says you do not have to take the loan. So if you say you went through the whole process with one of these and you decide to take the other, that's okay. So whichever you feel is the best fit. Again, the first one that came out, everybody wanted to go for it. That's what created all the volume, because it was all that was available. And it's a decent loan. You know, it's at 3.75% interest rate. Both of them carry great interest rates. The first one do not have forgiveness element. This one does. Again, because they're trying to protect employees. And so you have to comply with, there's quite a bit of compliance that goes with this. So when I send you the documents, I think it's going to answer a lot of questions.
Okay. And I think that's why, you know, a lot of people have, sometimes there's this fear associated with government programs, SBA programs, their loan programs, because of the number of requirements involved, the paperwork, and maybe it becomes confusing. Where do I fit in? What is my business eligible for? Can you shed some light on that? What helps make it easier?
Well, first of all, I'm a 35-year banker, so I've approved loans for many years. And what will stop the whole package is if you leave something out. And so there will be a requirement of what needs to be included. And so absolutely include everything. Just don't in your mind say, well, that's not so important. You have to include everything or it's just going to go in another stack. And I will tell you, my sense is if it goes in another stack, it's going to go to the bottom of the deck. So you really want absolutely to put everything in there. If you're working with a bank on these new ones, they should be able to give you a list of what they require because each bank has their own requirements. SBA has certain guidelines, but some banks go a step or two beyond, which they can do. So what you want to do is ask for that list of requirements and absolutely provide everything. Now, on the tax returns, they're not required on the disaster, but they, excuse me, I'm sure the banks are going to require it.
Okay. So I'm just clicking through some of your slides to give people a sense of what they're going to see if they do look at the online portal. But I like your advice. I think it's best to talk to a person, and that's why we're teaming you up with resources like this. For those of you on the webinar, we're highlighting these folks because I think they're a great benefit to you. There's a question here: if a business already laid off employees, can they rehire and get the PPP loan?
From what I read, and again, we just got all of this like today and yesterday. There are some of those conditions that are favorable. The whole intent is, and some have already had to lay people off. And by the way, there is one more small emergency kind of loan that's available, and exactly in that situation where they had to lay off a couple of folks. But if they get this assistance, they can hire them back. So that's the whole purpose, is they want to protect employees. So I would say the answer is yes.
Okay, so you heard that the key is definitely pursue a conversation and talk through your circumstances so that you can determine the best fit and the eligibility. Again, I'm just rolling through your slides, Ellen, and then, but just so that people know that all of this detailed information, which I think is very handy because it's often, it just can seem overwhelming when you have all of these forms in front of you, but to have a copy of it on this PowerPoint is very helpful. So I appreciate that. I'm gonna turn it back to this direction so we can keep moving, and let's see if I can make sure that. So we are going to take our next speaker. And oh, are you still, let's see. Okay, let me make sure I find you. And that's going to be Liz Pocock. She is CEO of Startup Tucson and the 10 West Impact Festival. And I'm so happy that Liz is joining us because I think she is going to be able to share what they are doing to help keep entrepreneurs and small businesses connected. Let me make sure I'm on the right. Somehow, is my screen back to where it needs to be?
You're still sharing the SBA slides.
How do I stop that? Okay, that's bizarre. Okay, see, live and learn. Okay. I'm gonna try this again. Here you are. Okay. See, everyone's gonna be very patient with us as we figure this out. But Liz, I'm just thrilled. So I want you to share a little bit about how you're gonna keep us connected during all of this.
Yeah, sure. So just to give everyone a little background, if you're not familiar with Startup Tucson, Startup Tucson is a 501c3. We've been operational in Tucson since 2012, and our goal is really to help educate early stage entrepreneurs. We work very closely with Ellen and her team at SBDC, in addition to a lot of other partners here in town. And so we provide a lot of mentorship and networking opportunities in addition to startup education. And one of the things we do a lot of is events. So obviously all of that is on pause right now. We're still striving really hard to make sure that there's opportunities for you as business owners to connect with each other, with mentors, and with the resources that you need in this kind of crazy time. So we are continuing to offer some of our education online. So we've converted those to virtual courses. We are offering Startup Labs, which is the first place to kind of start in your entrepreneurship journey. So if you are struggling, trying to make a pivot right now, or you know someone to bring a business on at this exact moment, the labs is a really great place to start. Our next lab is April 13th. It's a 2-hour workshop. It will be online. Those are $10 workshops right now. If you have a specific need, especially trying to pivot, we got some contacts from some different creatives in the community, some different people that are, traditionally restaurant workers that are trying to bring a new business online. We're offering different scholarships, so please reach out to my team, and we're here to help. We're also moving some of our networking online. So we do a weekly startup coffee event. Usually that's in person at our space. We bring a different mentor or previously successful founder, talk about how they built their company, lessons learned. We're moving those startup coffees virtual. So every Wednesday morning, now starting at 8:30, you can log on to our Facebook page, and we will have a live stream of that particular session. You'll be able to ask questions similar to this all through Facebook. And this week is Gina Catalano. She's an amazing, amazing, amazing mentor in our community. And she's going to give us some insight on operation right now and kind of where we can all go from here. So she'll be a great person to connect with. And so then we offer connection services. So similar to what Ellen does at SBDC, we have our team will meet with you one-on-one and help you think about what your next steps might be, what goals you can accomplish. We're really here to be your partner in what your next and kind of where you're going. So that might be connecting you with somebody like Tim. I see Tim in the chat over here, or somebody at the chamber, or somebody like Barbara. Kind of depends on where you are and what you're currently trying to accomplish. We can really help find the resources. There are a lot of amazing resources in our community that are designed specifically to help entrepreneurs. And so our goal is really to make sure you can access all of those in a way that it doesn't make you want to pull your hair out. So a lot of that is now also listed on Connect Tucson, Barbara's new website that the city just brought online. But we are here, and our team can help with that. Another thing we put together more recently is called a resource roundup. The chamber's focus was specifically on resources like what Ellen is talking about, so different SBA loans that you can take advantage of, different programs you can take advantage of. Ours also includes some things about best practices for moving your business online. So that could mean how you're converting your team to functioning remotely. There's tools that we use like Slack, all these different kind of services. So we put together a list of kind of bootstrapped resources that we usually use for startups, but now are more relevant for all sorts of businesses on how to convert things to living in an online remote world. So that's available on our website. Another thing that we did last week that was pretty fun was a digital concert series. So specifically to help some of our musicians that have lost a lot of their gigs here in town, we, in partnership with the Musician COVID Relief Fund, ran a digital concert series all week long over lunchtime. 5 different local acts performed, and kind of an entertainment, bring people together sort of vibe. And we really enjoyed that. I think it was a positive thing happening in this kind of crazy time. So we're looking to bring more special projects like that online. So if anybody has ideas or things that they want to see happen in our community, our team is ready to help. And the last thing I wanted to mention, Barbara, which we're super excited about. So we identified through this process that there's been a lot of restaurant roundups. There's been a lot of lists that talk about our service industries and how you can support them by curbside pickup. But one of the things that we're not seeing, and that a gap that we identified, is some of our smaller local businesses that are more services or product based, especially makers and artists and creatives. People that you would normally see at, say, the 4th of Fair, where they did theirs virtually, but Cultivate and some of those different artists and small businesses have a place where they're all collectively together. So we're bringing online in the next 2 weeks our place. It'll be a list of ways that you can shop local and really support these more product-based businesses in this time. With the goal that you can buy something now and gift it later. So whether that's your Mother's and Father's Day gifts, your birthday presents, your as far out as Christmas, all sorts of ways that we can support our local businesses. And so really, our goal is that we'll use our kind of brand power through both 10 West and all of our connections in the entrepreneurship ecosystem to really push those that marketplace out to the broader community and allow us all to help support local. So if you are a business that would like to be listed in that platform, like information, market. And you can kind of explore all that. If you're somebody that's helping support entrepreneurs and small businesses and you know somebody that would benefit by being listed, please send them our way.
So Liz,
And I think that's it.
I may have you repeat that place where to be listed. There was a little break
Yes.
on your audio at that point. So where should they go?
They should go to startuptucson.com/startupmarket. And I can put it in the chat comment right here.
Okay. And I know there's, Tamara's raising her hand. Tamara, would you be able to put something in the chat box? And then let me ask, there was a question, is it possible to move Startup Coffee to or off of Facebook? Let's see, how does that, or is that where it is currently?
It's on a Facebook Live. You don't have to be a member to log in to watch it. You can view the live form from our main page. We are looking at moving it to YouTube so that there would be some additional ways to access it. Celine, I think that comment's from you. If you want to send me an email, we'll make sure that you get the information. Okay. So my email is, I'll put this here too. It's just liz@startuptucson.com.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So lots of great things that you're doing. And part of what I love about it is that, you know, even though we feel a little bit isolated working remotely and doing these, you know, not having our regular networking, it's so important now that we utilize some of these alternative ways to stay connected and to talk to people. And then we don't maybe feel like we're going through this alone. So I think that serves, if nothing else, a great mental health benefit for our businesses. So but that sounds great. The resource roundup and those best practices for moving your business online, I think will be very helpful for everyone. So now let's go. I'm going to see if Daniel is ready. And I know that he may be available by audio. So I will introduce Daniel Howe as the Workforce Development Specialist with Pima County One Stop. And I know there's been a lot of questions about how to access the programs and resources related to unemployment, both on the employer side and the employee side. So I want to give Daniel a chance to share a little bit right now. Daniel, make sure you unmute yourself if you can. And I'm still waiting for you. We can't hear you yet. Okay, I'm gonna let him figure that out. In the meantime, I will note that, as you mentioned too, Liz, Tim Medcoff is on the line and he's been sharing back and forth in the chat box about compiling a list of banks, great resources for those that may not have lenders already. I know Ellen has relationships, you have relationships, Liz. So hopefully someone can get at least 2 or 3 names of someone to reach out to and have a conversation, and then that hopefully will give them a place to start for the loan products. How about Daniel?
So, can I say something?
Yes.
So Tim Medcoff, the whole firm's been really helpful to us through the SBDC network with some great information. And then also I want to mention to Liz that the disaster relief loans are available to startups. The ones that the banks do will be a little bit different because typically up to 2 years they were not doing SBA loans. So I'm not saying that won't change, but just for clarity. But the disaster relief loans, they will work with early stage startup companies.
Great.
That's great. Thanks, Ellen.
Okay, so I'm still not finding Daniel. I'm thinking maybe, Daniel, if you want to disconnect and reconnect, that maybe something magical will happen. That's about the most technical advice I could offer right now.
Yeah, and potentially, Daniel, if you log in through the link, not that if you signed up for the webinar, but the one that Barbara sent us specifically, that could have something to do with it.
So in the meantime, Tim, I am going to bring you up, I think, or at least if you want to unmute yourself, Tim Medkoff, and then maybe you also have some information of late about the unemployment or programs and benefits. Tim?
Sure. Can you hear me, Barbie? Or Barbara?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So, yeah, on the unemployment with the CARES Act, the federal government is providing a stimulus to the Arizona Department of Economic Security that will provide $600 per week in addition to the $240 that an employee can draw from typical Arizona unemployment benefits. So a total of $840 per week for the next 4 months. After 4 months, that well dries up from the federal side. So then the employee would revert back to $240 a week with the Arizona Department of Economic Security for the next 10 weeks thereafter. So you can draw unemployment benefits for 26 weeks. In addition, employers can take a look at the shared work program, which allows you to reduce payroll expenses between 10 and 40% in lieu of doing a layoff, which if you can do that, apply through that shared work program on the Department of Economic Security website. That's a way to keep your majority of your employees employed. As Ellen was talking about under the CARE Act, you can continue to employ your employees. That is the purpose of that statute. But you can reduce pay slightly by up to 25%. And if you do a shared work program along with that reduction, then those employees could go to the Arizona Department of Economic Security to potentially be made whole on that loss. But you as an employer can then still take that payroll protection money and apply it to rent, utilities, and interest rate debt, as Ellen mentioned. So it's a really great program if you're a small business and qualify.
That is really good information. And how does that's where I was thinking Daniel would be able to, be able to comment on this. Do both employers and employees go to the same place? Who should they contact to start the process for some of those benefits?
So for the unemployment benefits, if you're an employee who's been laid off, or loses your job in the near future, then you can just go directly to the Department of Economic Security and you can apply online for those unemployment benefits. If you're an employer and you have workers and you don't want to lay somebody off and you'd rather take advantage of the shared work program, then you can go apply online as well. And you just need the list of employees who do the same job that you can represent, that you're not going to lay that person off. Instead, you're going to reduce the hours for the 4 employees, for instance, that do the same work. So that's where you would go for that. And then on the CARES Act, as Ellen mentioned, the lenders are kind of up in the air. In fact, I got an email earlier this morning from the SBA directly that they're still waiting for guidance and guidelines. The expectation is lenders will be able to start lending as soon as this Friday onto that payroll protection program. But I just talked to a banker literally 15 minutes before the phone call that we started at 3, and he said they're having a call at 4 o'clock to get some more direction and guidance on the PPP program. So there are a number of mid-size as well as bigger lenders that are providing support on the SBA 7A stimulus loans. And Ellen's exactly right. Most banks, or a lot of banks, have an SBA loan officer, but not all do. Those that do not can apply and get approved. So the hope from the government is the reason why they're making this available to the private lenders is they don't want to have the same fiasco that happened with the EIDL loans. So that's why they're opening it up to private lenders to basically process those loans for the government.
Did you, Tim,
Yes.
did you mention also that there's, in terms of the employer and the employee, there's some requirements around that, and if people need to be off, I'm sure like me, we've been trying to read through this whole thing.
Right.
There were, when you get into, there is also some tax benefits at the end of the year when businesses do support their employees. It's a little bit more complicated, but there will be some benefits. First of all, it's the loans that are available with the Paycheck Protection Program, but also there'll be some tax benefits.
Yeah, there are. So for the second round of that the government passed last week, the Emergency Paid Sick Leave and the Expanded Family Medical Leave Acts specifically provide payroll tax credits to employers that provide that benefit. There's also been some guidance and clarity provided by the DOL and IRS. So if you normally have to pay payroll taxes of, for instance, $3,000, but you provided paid sick leave to your employees of $1,000, then you'll now get a dollar for dollar reduction. You only have to stroke a check to the IRS for $2,000 for payroll taxes. So there is that benefit. If you elect not to do the PPP, then you can elect to have payroll tax reduced at 50%. That's a lesser known sort of benefit of the CARES Act that I'm still getting my arms wrapped around. Ellen, you've been kind to say that it's 800 pages. It's actually 880 pages. Not that anybody's counting. Kudos to you that you've been able to read as much as you have. I've been trying to focus on the stuff that's relevant to employers only. So there is a number of other sort of programs built into this CARES Act that provides some benefits to a lot of different industries, not just employers.
Okay, I might have solved the Daniel Howe problem. Daniel, shout out to us right now. No. I created.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Right. See, we handled that. We tap danced really well to tee this.
Man, I'm over here stressing out, trying to figure out how to get connected somehow.
I think I figured out for you something that would work. So let's dive in, Daniel, with your role at Pima One Stop. Talk a little bit about the resources available there. I appreciate Tim covering some of the options, but go ahead and give us a sense of what you all can help with.
Yes, and this is more for the employer side, right? And that's who we're addressing, more so the small businesses, or both?
Start with that, but I think employers
okay.
want to know how to communicate with their employees as well about these benefits.
Right. So the best bet would be, we have a link, an email address that goes to my team, and that's businessservices@pima.gov. And we all have access to that. And so if you emailed that email address with any questions, we can touch base. We do have, so normally we would go out to the employer's site, or we would have them come to us and meet in the groups as everybody else. But we've been able to put everything onto PDFs that we can send out to the participants as well as the employers. And that goes over the UI benefits, phone numbers and stuff to contact, how to apply, and all of that information. Now, another thing, also at that businessservices.gov email, you can send us anything that's kind of going on, whether you have any hiring that's going on. So what I specialize with the construction industry, and they're kind of on in full force. I don't know what's going to happen with what came down today with Governor Ducey's office, but as of right now, what they were doing is kind of pre-ordering a lot of the materials that they needed, knowing what was coming down the line. So that way, if the supply chains or anything like that got affected, then they would be able to at least have the materials on hand and be able to work and not have to worry about supply chains. So with that demand, by them having to purchase all that stuff, now they are actually hiring individuals to store, stack, and inventory all of that material. So it's actually picked up some jobs for some of the construction companies we're working with. And then a lot of the landscaping and janitorial companies that I'm working with, they're still out in full force. Janitorial is actually picking up in some areas, with the stepped up sanitation and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's still quite a bit. So if there's any positions needing filled, you can also send that to that businessservices.gov website. But if any layoffs are coming down the road, then that would also go to that. One of our team members would then go in there, and what we do is send that information out to our participants, and we have about 8,000 participants that check that email for any job openings that may come up. Can I answer some of those?
So it's good. It's if someone, you're giving us a sense of the idea that there are still some opportunities out there. Definitely, if someone needs something because their regular job has changed so much, or they're unable to perform it. So what else? What else needs to, I wanted you to make sure that you gave us the email that you mentioned. If you'll type that into the chat box, everyone will have that way to connect. I think you gave an email and a website. So that would be helpful.
Daniel? Oh,
yeah.
Can I ask? Oh, tell me when you're ready.
Go ahead.
I'm ready.
So Daniel, one of the things is the SBDC, we work a lot with veterans, and you have the Veterans Center. So I think it's important for everyone to know that. And then the training that you do is really critical. I've talked to some companies that are actually doing okay, and some of the construction industry is still working. So in terms of your retraining, I think that's valuable for the businesses that have not been affected.
Yes. So yes, the Veterans Office that we have right next door to us, they do have veteran services there. So we have, and there's also a veterans representative that is on our business services team as well. And his name is Bernie. So his any veteran information that would come to that businessservices.gov email, we would then filter it to him to get to Veterans Department.
That's great. I was noticing in the chat, there was a question about the new order for stay at home by 5 p.m. And there was a question, do restaurant business owners need to close by 5? Tim Medkoff responded that the stay at home order takes effect at 5 p.m. tomorrow, and the order does not prevent restaurants from continuing to do takeout or delivery as they have been doing. So thanks for that question and that answer. And I see Daniel has the email businessservices@pima.gov if you have questions on your job, your employment, unemployment, opportunities, anything like that. Is that right, Daniel?
Yes. And also we set up a hotline for individuals affected. So instead of coming into our offices, we do have a hotline number as well. I'll get that information and shoot that on the chat line also.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So I think there are probably other burning questions out there. So maybe in our remaining minutes, are there some that have other topics that you'd like to hear about? I think there was, I'm still scrolling back through. It says, does the stay at home apply to construction companies? And that's a good question, because I have had a question about contract labor, moving companies, construction companies. Daniel or others on the line here with us, how do we respond to that? What do construction companies need to know?
So what I've heard of now, so I've been in contact with some of the construction trades organizations here in Pima County, and they're nationwide. And they said that what they're noticing in other states, that construction has not been affected for a few reasons. That the spacing, there's plenty of space in between individuals. They're outdoors. Now, I did hear when San Francisco had shut down that there was an issue there. So she said that she was going to follow up on that and kind of see what the stipulations were. So this week I'll be reaching back out to those organizations to see what they're hearing nationwide. But as of right now, they're hearing across the country that construction had not been affected due to that.
I'm hearing a lot of the same thing. I'm talking to some of my construction clients, and it is true that they generally, if they're working on a machine, you know, it's separate enough and the spaces are enough. So a lot of those are working. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other feedback on that? Let's see, there are questions. Let's go to this one. Daniel, let's see, for you, Roche and other employers are seeking displaced healthcare workers, school nurses, dental offices, those types of folks for possible work as temperature screeners for their business. Any leads there or thoughts? If you
So yes, yes. So another teammate of mine, Donna Ruthroff, she works with the healthcare sector. So I know that she was mentioning that a lot of healthcare employers were a little quiet. So knowing that there is an outlet for individuals that are hiring, that would be a great contact, and I can get you connected with Donna Ruthroff.
Okay, great. There was the question about, it looks like the same takeaways for the landscaping teams. Are they viewed similarly to construction? Any thoughts on that?
Yes. What I'm hearing as of right now, yes, they are considered the same as construction. They are out and about, and they have not been affected that I have heard yet.
Okay.
Barbara?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Tim. With respect to these issues, part of this is ultimately going to be the devil's in the detail. I agree with everything that Daniel's saying. I fully anticipate that these trades will continue to operate, but I just checked the governor's website. He hasn't issued a new executive order with respect to his stay-at-home order, and I suspect when he does, he'll provide some clarity in that as it relates to these trade questions that were being asked right now.
Okay, so someone listening, we are practicing everyone working from home except one employee in the office. Does the stay-at-home rule affect them? Can they continue to work with one employee going into work?
So Barbara, this is Tim again. My gut reaction is yes, they can, especially if some of the work for businesses can't be done from home. For instance, if you have a bookkeeper or comptroller, financial person that opens your mail and gets your checks and deposits those, my intuition and gut tells me that they can go to work. One of the things that you may need to do is get a letter from your attorney or have your CEO or whoever the head honcho is for your business basically give a letter to whoever that person is that indicates that they're performing an essential function for your business and that they're authorized to go from home to work and back, and that there's social distancing and isolating so that they're not interacting with anybody else to minimize the transmission of the virus. And I think if you cover all those bases, you shouldn't get hassled about your essential person going to take care of those things that you need done at the office.
Yeah, and I have an example today with, actually my daughter works for a landscape company and she does the finance. And she got a letter from her doctor saying she needs to work at home but has permission to go when no one's in the office and pick up the paperwork and take it home and work. So I think that's the whole thing, is that whole protection when they go to the office to pick things up, that they have that protection and then work at home.
These are great questions, and that's great advice. I know a lot of people have these questions because there's a lot of gray area in what we're dealing with, it seems like, or there has been, and we're just all trying to find clarity. The question here is, what loans or grants can commercial property owners apply for when tenants cannot pay rent? Do we have a solution for that? Ellen, is there anything?
You know, it hasn't been addressed specifically, except that if they are an LLC, because the other thing was franchises, people wondering about franchises, and franchise employees can get access. So my thought is yes, but I will do some more checking on it because it's a business. And if the people that are renting spaces cannot pay rent because their business is affected, then it's a direct relationship to the landlord. So my initial thought is yes, but I will check it out.
Okay. So question, if we reduce employees and or cut hours, can they apply for unemployment insurance?
Can they? I don't know, maybe
I
Kim
was,
answers that.
this is Danny. I was told that they can, but it would depend. So that as long as they're just tracking what they're doing, because I want to say that there was options for part-time benefits. So it would really depend case by case. And Tim brought up a great point. I mean, things are changing hour by hour, right? So as we get a hold of one thing and some processes, things change again. But as of right now, I want to say, because they did change some of the UI requirements. So the fees or the payout, I think, is quite a few hundred more per week. And then you don't have to do job search or submit job searches. Typically, you'd have to send 3 to 4 job searches a week. I think as of right now, that all has been waived. I'm not sure if that has changed yet again. But in a conversation the other day, I want to say that there are options for part-time benefits.
To answer the question, yes, employees who have been furloughed or put on a shutdown can apply for unemployment benefits. So that is available to them. If the work hours have been reduced, there was some guidance that came out from the Secretary of Labor on Thursday that clarifies if, for instance, you're normally a full-time employee and your schedule's reduced to, say, 32 hours a week or 20 hours a week, that you cannot use the emergency paid sick leave to make you whole on that reduction. If the employer's issued an order or notice to all employees that they're reducing the hours for one job title or all jobs for the employer, then the emergency paid sick leave will not bridge the gap for that difference, but that's where unemployment could kick in to help.
Okay. I wanted to share a comment from Kristen McGarvey with the Arizona Commerce Authority, and we did see this in our inbox in the last day or so. ArizonaTogether.org is a place that you can also go and find information. It's a statewide resource that the governor's put together, and so you will find a lot of information and resources as well as a place to donate, but ArizonaTogether.org. And then the hotline number that Daniel mentioned is 520-724-5735. 520-724-5735. And how about so it says, question, where can we get letters for ourselves as business owners? So I think you're referring to figure out whether you have an essential business function or not. What are the thoughts on that, Tim or Daniel?
So I'll be happy to take this one, or at least try, and Daniel will probably give a better answer than I will. So, my gut reaction is you got two options. So I've got a lot of nonprofits I represent, and I'm co-drafting a letter for those nonprofits with the executive director or president CEO of those businesses, where both of our contact information is listed on the letter that in essence basically says that this person is performing an essential job function for our business, and they're driving straight from home to work and back, and they will engage in social distancing and otherwise comply with the governor's executive order. And then it includes the email address and phone numbers for both individuals, so that way if they get stopped or hassled for whatever reason, then they have a backup, if you will, to deal with the law enforcement or whoever else is stopping them or giving them heartache or grief for being out on the road. And then the other option, if you don't have an outside attorney, then you could go to the doctors, as Ellen mentioned. I'm not a big fan of doing that right now because doctors are stretched thin as it is, and I'd rather they be taking care of patients as opposed to writing notes on essential functions. That's where I think if the CEO or outside counsel, if you have one, can draft that, that would be just as effective, at least in the short term, until doctors start freeing up a little bit more.
Okay. So just to clarify, if you're an employee out, if you can, if you're working the restaurant delivery or you're going in and doing the takeout work that our restaurants are doing, should you have something with you? I mean, my thought from the city side is, I know our first responders and public safety are busy doing a lot of other things right now. They're probably not going to stop very many cars on the road looking for people to figure out whether they're doing the right thing or not. I think what we're trying to encourage everyone is to do what you need to do, which is either stay home and stay safe, and be distanced so that you're not contributing to the problem. And then if you have to be out, do what you're supposed to do when you're out and where you need to be. And so I think let's all use some common sense there. But I don't think you're going to get hassled in any way. So I would suggest that. Though my PD friends might frown on me, but no, I think that we're all in agreement. So the final question here on construction, going back to that one more time, was, you know, they do a lot of home remodels and additions. Would they be affected due to that? Most of their work is indoors. So they're noticing some clients canceling or postponing those projects. Will the SBA loan or the PPP apply to the construction contracting industry? You know, if they're losing work because of, you know, I would think, Ellen, and unmute yourself and you can round that out.
Yeah, I would say that would count.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so there's,
If a
go ahead.
impacted because lots of business, and they didn't spell out every reason, but if it's for a reason where someone's not comfortable for them to come out, and they want to postpone it, then I would say that's legitimate.
Okay. So, and finally, Tim, I appreciate you as well today, as you helped us last week as well. And as the Chamber President, we know that the Tucson Metro Chamber has a great list of resources also on their website, tucsonchamber.org. So please go there and look for resources there. I want to thank all of our panelists today and sharing all of the good information that I know everyone is desperate for. We're going to keep doing these webinars on Mondays at 3 p.m. So please stay connected. We'll make sure you get an email out that includes follow-up handouts and slides and other information so that you have that. And then please feel free to reach out to any of us directly. Reach to me. You can look at our City of Tucson Economic Initiatives website at connecttucson.org, or you can call our small business hotline, which is 520-837-4100. So 837-4100. And again, I appreciate all of you, and I hope you all have a great week as best you can, navigating all of this. But let's stay in this together. So thank you all.